Avowed is Obsidian's upcoming action medieval fantasy role-playing game set to release for PC and Xbox next year. Like others, I was a little disappointed by the overall change in graphical scope and tone between the release trailer and the gameplay trailer. I've had some time to slowly appreciate the colourful art style and the more fantastical elements present in the trailer. So let's ask the question, what should Avowed be? Fans who have played through the Pillars series, please feel free to correct me if any of my ideas conflict with the game's lore. Let's begin. Avowed takes place in Aora, or the Living Lands. It's a home to a range of valleys with unique biomes, as well as civilizations with diverse races to interact with. A lot of the land is unknown, meaning the player will be the first to discover parts of the map. As mentioned earlier, Avowed is based on the world of Pillars of Eternity, a top-down RPG also made by Obsidian. While new players won't need to play through these games to get the gist of Avowed, fans of Pillars of Eternity won't be left out with various references to the world of the previous games. You play an envoy of the Aderan Empire, set to investigate and stop a plague that is corrupting the souls of the populace. The game features melee combat, contextual-based spells, archery, a great depth of builds, and based on the trailer, moral choices that will affect Aora's outcome.
Secrets you keep? You're either here to save us, or destroy us.
Now we know everything, let's add. For melee combat and overall gameplay design, Avowed should take heavy inspiration from Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. It should be in the middle of all brainstorming and conceptual meetings for this game, and if anyone on the team disagrees,
the present situation.
But what should Avowed take from Dark Messiah? We've heard the game features contextual-based magic. Think Skyrim, where you set fire to oil and it ignites, dealing more damage to the NPC. This should be extended to all approaches to gameplay, be it melee, ranged, magic or stealth. I'll refer back to Messiah's design throughout each section. For now, let's stick with melee warrior builds. The game should have a variety of builds that all offer different mechanics, NPC interactions, armor, weapons, blah blah blah. Warriors can slice off body parts with swords and axes, or crush body parts with maces and clubs. This would make combat more, I hate to say it, visceral and engaging. Give us a large range of finishes to dispatch enemies with, making the combat more cinematic and less repetitive. We know the skill tree is more ability than stat based. I actually like this, as perks that deal extra damage can be noticed through gameplay, however it doesn't equate to unlocking a whole new ability. There should be standard combat practices like block, parry, perfect parry, disarm, counter kill, all dished out to the player as they level up. Let weapon types and builds have advantages and disadvantages. Bladed weapons are more effective against unarmored opponents, whereas blunt weapons are more effective against armored opponents. This would force players to adapt to the situation of the level based on their builds. For example, the sword build comes up against an armored opponent. Knowing the sword alone won't be effective, the player has to search the level zone for an advantage, leading the enemy to a ledge to parry them, then kick them off, throwing an oil jar and quickly setting them alight to deal critical damage. This is where Dark Messiah comes in. Levels or combat zones should be filled with interactable elements the player can choose to use or ignore. Spike walls to kick enemies into, fires to kick enemies into, simple throwables like oil jars, plates, and even other enemies' corpses. Cut a rope holding a chandelier in place and have it swing back and forth, smashing into hostile targets. This can be applied to whatever situation the player finds themselves in. Pick up a tankard in a tavern brawl and smash it over the enemy's head, then pick up a stool and hurl it at another enemy halfway across the room. Not every object in the game needs to be interactable in this manner, but a few key assets given interactable properties would give the game so much variation and replay value. Let's move on to magic.
Strangers dance for great honor.
Magic seems to have been given a large focus, at least based off of the only gameplay trailer. We've seen ranged magic, weapon fortifying magic, contextual based elemental magic, area attacks, and longer charging spells. As mentioned earlier, light contextual magic has already been confirmed, so let's list a few possibilities and take it further. Electrocuting puddles of water with enemies in them shocks and kills them. Tossing oil onto an enemy then setting them alight will do more damage than fire alone. Conjure ice puddles so enemies slip up, allowing the player to get attacks in or escape. Telekinesis would be a way for the mage build to interact with the Dark Messiah elements. Pick up a barrel with magic and hurl it at a group of enemies, dealing damage and sending them flying. Do this with a pitchfork and impale your enemies into the wall behind them. This would need to be balanced with potions and the player gradually increasing their magic stats. Again, these would all depend on the lore of Pillars of Eternity, but so long as nothing conflicts, these would be just a few things to make the mage build fun to play through, while utilising the same mechanics for the other two gameplay styles. Players should be given multiple ways to approach stealth. The use of noises in environment to scare enemies and make them break their usual cycles. Light parkour could be implemented with a jump, wall climb, vault and safety roll for quick maneuverability around combat zones, as well as for spying and escapes in more densely populated areas like cities. Climbable chains and ropes would give stealth players the options to reach higher ground of the level, enabling them to observe and plan their approach. Let the player pick up and hide bodies, or use them to lure out clusters of other enemies. Give us a range of takedowns for variety in different tactics. Aerial-based takedown, water takedowns, non-lethal takedowns, and lethal takedowns, so players can have more depth to their build, deciding to infiltrate areas without bloodshed, or by killing everyone. Pickpocketing and lockpicking doesn't have to be revolutionary, but don't give the player the ability to pickpocket equipped items like clothes and weapons. That's dumb. The steps the player takes to stealth should involve more than just their skill. Stealth will be harder in armor, forcing the player to wear less noisy clothing and suffering the penalty of being without armor for combat, should they break stealth. Extreme weather conditions can help with avoiding detection. Stealth in an area with heavy rainfall would allow the player more leeway on errors, same with fog or darkness. Taking inspiration from Fallout New Vegas, let players equip factional apparel and blend in with that faction, avoiding combat altogether. This could be balanced by higher ranking enemies that can see through disguises, and a high speech skill if the player gets caught doing antisocial behaviour. Leveling up in archery would reduce bow sway, drawing time, and accuracy. Perks could include zooming in, slowing down time for a more accurate shot, on the ground or mid-air, and pushback options for when the enemy gets too close. While we've not seen any dialogue gameplay, it stands to reason that we'll have characters to speak with and interact with. For the dialogue system, let's not have any one-line responses. These really take away from the role-playing aspect when implemented in RPGs. Instead, for any conversation, pick a few character archetypes like the hero, the outlaw.
You don't seem to understand the situation.
I understand that if any more words come pouring out your cunt mouth, I'm gonna have to eat every fucking chicken in this room.
The jester.
I am Tyrion, son of Tywin of Clan Lannister.
How would you like to die, Tyrion, son of Tywin?
In my own bed, at the age of 80, with a belly full of wine and a girl's mouth around my cock.
A villain.
Show me your cunt.
And design player applies in conversation around them. This is something Obsidian is great at, giving you a range of dialogue to either please, impress, threaten, befriend, or even provoke to attack. I like this approach because it gives the player the option to pick the dialogue choices that best get what they want from the opposing character, or sticking to what their build would say and living with the consequences. Dumb dialogue is another strength of Obsidian's, and that's not an insult. I mean, they genuinely write dialogue for dumb player builds really well.
Phineas Wells is wanted by the board. I want to convince you to turn him in to us. I'm not on your ship. This is a transmission.
Adjutant Akonde's call has been terminated.
Speech-based skill checks seen in the Fallout series would be another interesting layer to dialogue, and I'm practically certain that these will feature in the game. For example, the swordsman build with a high blade skill might be able to persuade other swordsman characters to get what they want, whereas the sneak speech skill check would be inaccessible to him. Perk-based speech checks would give players rare and unique advantages in quests revolving around their chosen skill. Give us companion quests and companions chirping in dialogue with other characters. This is a nice way of letting companions express themselves, while adding exposition or again giving players unique options to overcome obstacles.
I am extremely anguished, Captain. Please respect my feelings in this difficult time.
I doubt Mr. Bedford's ever felt real pain. We could introduce him to the sort of suffering that actually constitutes extreme anguish. For the good of his understanding, of course.
Be careful you don't irritate my guards, Vicar. You might not like their rather narrow understanding of what constitutes excessive force.
Actions within dialogue based on the context, like punching or hugging, gives the dialogue another layer of gameplay. Avowed's mechanics between various factions should include stuff we've seen before, like doing quests and being polite to one group comes with reputational rewards, while stealing from them or killing them results in penalties. The penalties could include sending thugs after you, giving you higher prices within that faction's trading hub, and having more negative reactivity from the NPCs of said faction. And finally, Avowed should have deep moral choices as well as straightforward good and evil choices. Both of these are useful for different reasons. The deep moral choices allow for thought-provoking scenarios for the player to beat themselves up over, whereas more black and white decisions allow the player's choice of character to shine through. And for me, that should about do it on making Avowed potentially Game of the Year. It's important to bear in mind that I am not a game developer. It could be that these ideas wouldn't work when implemented together. However, if they were to get a few of these at least, it would be a great start. Let me know your ideas in the comments below, please like and subscribe, peace and love.
Is an oath worth the weight of a crown?